Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this special staff and faculty forum that's taking place as a part of our semester-long Conversations on the Liberal Arts here at Westmont. Anybody who may not know me, my name is Chris Heckley. I direct the Gady Institute for the Liberal Arts here, and we are the sponsors for today's event with some help from the Provost's office. Thank you to the Provost's office for supporting some of the cost of the meal. And we're also responsible for some of the other events that are happening across the semester in our Conversations on the Liberal Arts series. Very much looking forward to our conversation with my friends and colleagues here to my right, but before we get to that, I have one announcement, and then we might have some announcements from the floor. So from me, first of all, yesterday we had a terrific event in here with Dr. Blakey Vermeule, who is the Albert Garrard Professor of Literature at Stanford. Thank you, Blakey, for that. I think I saw you out here. Would you stand and just let us say hi to you? Thanks very much for being with us, Blakey. And then this afternoon at 3:30, again here in the GLC, we're going to have a second keynote address and discussion with Dr. Molly Worthen, the New York Times contributor and author of Apostles of Reason, The Crisis of Authority in American Evangelicalism. Molly, I think I saw you too. Welcome. Maybe you would just stand and we can say hi to you. Thanks for being with us, Molly. Her address this afternoon is Teaching Empathy, the Liberal Arts in a Post-Truth For-Profit Age. So we're looking forward to that and very much hope you all can join us. All right, friends, let's get into things. I'm here with three terrific people that I regard as Westmont heroes. You might too. So they are, to my immediate right, Jenny Fuentes, who's the Assistant Director of Campus Life for Ministries and Outreach. Eben Drost, who is the Director of Music and Worship in the Campus Pastor's Office. And finally, Jason Tavares, who I'm sure none of you know, who is the Director of Institutional Resilience. That's a fancy name for COVID czar. Each does quiet work, sometimes visible, but often quiet work, sensitive work, I have to say, and incredibly valuable work that serves the mission of the college and really serves the kingdom of God. And what has them here today with me, each sees their undergraduate education as having made a significant difference in their ability to do the work that they're doing today. An undergraduate education that is distinctively a liberal arts education. In two of these cases, Jenny and Eben both are alums here of Westmont, and so enjoyed the Christian liberal arts education that we offer. Jason's story is a little different. He's a graduate of the University of Texas, or what we Texas Aggies like to call TU, and as a history major, I believe. Is that right? So I have enjoyed working with and getting to know these three, in some cases over many years, in some cases more recently, but I've been so impressed at the way each of them has spoken to how the character of the liberal arts education that they enjoyed as undergraduates has made a substantial difference to the sometimes tricky work they do today. So that's what I'm eager to explore with the three of you a little bit for all of our delight. So here we go. I'm going to start with you, Eben, if I can. You
Sure.
ready? Are you nervous?
I'm so ready, but
Okay.
just so you know, you've been so complimentary. You should do my eulogy if that ever happens. After Scott does his
Is that coming
juggling
soon,
routine.
Eben?
I hate to break it
we're
to you,
talking
you
a
will
long
die
ways
one
away,
day.
I think. I'm going to be long dead by the time you have a eulogy, Eben. So, Eben, your role obviously takes highly skilled musical ability, but it's actually other kinds of skills and knowledge and sensitivities, I would say, that most impress me in the way you carry out your role. For one thing, everybody has opinions about worship music. I suspect the opinions vary widely in this very room. And that might be even more true when we start to add a lot of students to the conversation. And I'm guessing you're something of a lightning rod for those varying opinions. So it occurs to me that you have to exhibit a lot of sensitivity for those varying opinions and maybe even competing views. You have to be able yourself to understand those different views and appreciate those different perspectives and values. And then you have to help the rest of us do so as well, so that I'm just not just raging about how come there's not more organ music. And then it occurs to me that your role often involves guiding us to new places, oftentimes through worship music. You've had to see where the Westmont community has a, let's call it, growth edge, and sort of invite us into that growth with the elements of worship that you lead. So these are the things that kind of blow me away about your work. The kinds of skills that some people would call soft skills, I hate that term because I think these are really the hard skills, even though they're not perhaps concretely specifiable. Okay, so here's the simple question. Where did those come from? Now, you're not going to be able maybe to draw a line from point A to point B, but what I would love for us to explore together is how did your experience here, your classroom experience, your out-of-class experience, your relationships with faculty, whatever it was, how did your learning here help develop those kinds of skills and sensitivities in you?
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be able to answer some of that question. I can't say everything, but I do have some pretty specific examples that come to mind. But I just want to say the one thing I haven't heard from anyone is more bluegrass music in chapel, but somebody has recently brought up the idea of chapelation, and
I'm in.
Okay,
I'm going to be
okay.
there.
Breaking the ice. Smash. Plan that one. Okay, so I think one of my really distinct memories in terms of like different traditions doing different things and having different emphases, and sometimes those things feeling like they're in competition, but maybe they're actually not, was just from Christian doctrine class with Telford. And because I have these distinct memories of him explaining different items of Christian doctrine and different ways that they were kind of lived out in different traditions. And sometimes they look very different, like both Pentecostal churches and Eastern Orthodox churches have a high view of the Holy Spirit. If you've been to those services, they might look different, but there can be some things that are done differently but are the same appreciation of the work of the Holy Spirit. I do have notes, and I'm not going to apologize for looking at them. Or like some churches preach from the lectionary, some churches do lectio continua, where they preach through a book of the Bible. And a lot of these different traditions, even have different things in their architecture, like the pulpit might be central, or the altar might be central, or the chairs might be in a round, or there might be pews facing forward. And all these different things, sometimes you can't build, for example, a church building that has a round seating and also has immovable pews set up in a kind of more one-way facing sort of situation. Each of those can have strengths and weaknesses. And so to sum it all up, I think I got a very ecumenical worldview at Westmont, where I got to realize through this kind of liberal arts thing, there are a lot of different ways that Christians have done things. And sometimes it's just a matter of emphasis, and it's not a matter of actually being on a completely different page. It's not that differences aren't always important or matters of doctrine aren't important, but so that plays out in kind of the way I'm trying to balance what we do in chapel. And obviously I don't do it perfectly, but musically trying to help people see different traditions and trying to do it in a way that's ecumenical and that's teaching into that. I think other things, so much of what I learned about the faith was just reading Psalms before Principles of Music class with Steve Butler, and singing Bach as a music major, and doing gospel choir and things like that when we had that. And so I think one last thing I'd say about the liberal arts is just this broad way that it exposed me to a lot of things, from history to English with your wife, Sherry, and how all of that kind of helped me with this big overall idea, which I view my calling as helping people see themselves as part of a coherent story authored by God. So that takes imagination, it takes history, it takes church history, it takes biblical literacy, and liberal arts education really helped kind of integrate those. And then I think some of it's also just personality stuff, where like sometimes I kind of just laugh when people like don't like a certain style of music, and even if I like it, like I'm okay. I'm like, it's fine if you don't like it. I don't know. So, I mean, I only have the drums because of you, Chris, because you especially like the drums. I turn them up when you're there.
I see a drum set in a worship setting and I turn around. Sorry about that. Thank you, Eben, very much. Jenny, like Eben, your work takes some sort of concrete, specialized skills. Planning a program, motivating others, keeping countless details on track. But again, like Eben, there are some really well-honed, I want to say delicate skills and capacities that are a part of your work that stand out to me. So I think particularly of the way that you have shepherded the Potter's Clay leadership to introduce some change to that program. That's really delicate work. The way that you've partnered with faculty to bring research into those efforts at change. Obviously, your own cross-cultural skills, your language skills, the negotiating skills that must have been necessary to work with those on the ground in Ensenada. And then I think most impressive to me is just the courage of your convictions about effective ministry in the face of what I can imagine is a little bit of opposition to change in Potter's Clay, we might guess. So these are the elements of your work that I find especially impressive. And I would just ask you, as I did with Eben, can you see anywhere in your undergraduate Christian liberal arts education here where it was equipping you in those ways?
All of it.
All right, now get concrete for us.
Yes, definitely. So I was the pre-med student that quit after OCHEM, that then decided I was going to be a comm major, did that for a semester, and then realized I fell in love with literature and writing and ended up becoming an English major and still graduated in 4 years, right? That's the beauty of a liberal arts education. With that being said, everything from, as I recount and look back at my life here as a student at Westmont, doing the research, the intensive research and analytical analysis in my science classes have prepared me and equipped me when it comes to doing the research that I've needed to do for all of the ministries that I oversee. Being a comm student for a semester and taking a couple of classes with Greg Spencer, making me realize how we communicate and how we market things is very important, and having those tools being Holden really have helped me and supported me in my endeavors of being able to manage the transitions between the ministries. And also taking public speaking as a GE, right? And having some of the history and even Christian doctrine, or having some of the church history that with Helen Reed. Like, those are things that I recall that have come and played a major role. And even Fitness for Life. Just realizing the importance of rest and eating healthy, and actually implementing that in my students as my student leaders, and constantly saying, hey, you have to learn how to rest, you have to learn how to receive as you are shepherding and leading other students. So yeah, everything from math, analysis, and everything. And also I think one of the major attributes that I have to give is to all of our faculty, creating safe spaces for us to engage in conversations. And I have to say thank you to each and every single one of you for that you do for our students, even for myself as a student. And that also created in me the capacity to be able to reach out to other faculty. I want to say thank you to Cynthia Toms, even also just for reaching out and partnering in that capacity with us. And yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity for us to engage. I think sometimes we see student ministry as a way that we can't engage the faculty or the staff in, but there is so many ways that we can invite and cohesively come together to be able to bridge and even ask questions and have deep discussions that offer opportunities of learning engagement for our students globally and even ministerial when it comes to this.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, Jason, it might be said that you have a tricky job too. Obviously, there's many risks that the college faces that you are tasked with managing. The one, of course, that's been overwhelmingly obvious for the last 2 years, since I think 2 weeks after your arrival, that was nicely timed, is the COVID-19 pandemic. Boy, you have exhibited such an impressive array of knowledge, research skills, character traits over the course of the past 2 years in guiding the college through this pandemic. Incredibly impressive. I think of, again, your research skills, your communication skills. I wouldn't have seen these, but they have to be happening behind the scenes, negotiation skills, tons of planning, and planning in the face of moving targets all the time. I have to say what I'm most struck by, though, even though all of those are very impressive, is the skill that I think we've all needed so badly in the last 2 years, and maybe we've discovered we've needed it all along, and that's simply navigating uncertainty. That has been perhaps the most noteworthy element of your work. Okay, all remarkable. Again, as I asked Eben and Jenny, where did these come from? You know, you are a history major, for crying out loud. You know what people say about that. How am I ever going to use this, right? I am never going to use this. And I would love to hear from you ways in which your undergraduate education, maybe especially your history major, you might feel has equipped you for some of the things that I just identified.
Well, little did you know, I actually went to school to also learn how to swab and collect spit, so it was really, really convenient. I think one of the things that has really stuck with me is something that my dad told me a long, long time ago. He remembers this quote from the inside of a book in one of his history classes back in the day, and it said, "The mark of an educated man is a liberal education." And not from obviously the political sense, but being able to talk about a whole bunch of different things. So that was always something that really stuck with me and has kind of fueled a lot of, I guess, my educational and now professional journey. The liberal arts have been and continue to be unbelievably important to me. I was actually on the phone with my brother on the way down to the GLC today. And we were both just lauding the merits of liberal arts because it teaches you some very fundamental basics: how to think, how to read, and how to write. And if you can do all those things, you can be in the hard sciences, you can be a philosopher, you can be an engineer, you can do all these kinds of incredible things just because you know how to think through problems. I did not think I would be so imbued with COVID knowledge by this point in my short tenure at Westmont. And I am by no means an expert. In fact, I saw Dr. Hughes walk in here just a little while ago. I know he knows a lot more about medicine than I do, but I know that my minor in biology has helped inform a lot of the things that I have tried to convey to you as we've tried to navigate this, as you said, uncertainty. History, I mean, good Lord, we all know the importance of history. Those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. We've seen this in the pandemic of 1918. We've seen a lot of these same kinds of things that we're bucking up against right now and trying to use those lessons, even as, again, I'm communicating to you, not as an expert, but as someone that has studied history and has seen kind of what has happened before and trying to do the best that we can. The ability to digest information, research, understand what you're looking at. I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of incredible colleagues, namely Steve Giulio. I don't know if he's here today. He has been unbelievably important in helping me understand a lot of the biology and science of the things that I'm trying, again, to convey to all of you in a way that is hopefully at least accessible or digestible. All of those things were born from my liberal arts education. It's one of the reasons why I went to law school. You know, just the fact that I had to figure something out to do with that history degree. No. What's amazing is that foray into law school was not a singular stop. It was just a point on the journey to get to this point. I didn't want to be a regular lawyer. I didn't want to sit down and litigate or argue over silly lawsuits or things like that. But those things that I learned in my undergraduate liberal arts education helped guide me through not just that education, but also my law school education, and now, again, to this point. Something that is filled with transferable skills. And it's also grew this love in a lot of different things. Like, I had never heard of Smartsheet really until I got to this campus. Troy Harris is the Smartsheet guru, but he basically said, hey, if you can learn a little bit of programming, you can make things happen. Really? Well, I can't really count that well, but I think I can fake programming. He taught me stuff, and we ran with it. That I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't had that kind of background in loving the hard sciences as much as I love the quote-unquote softer subjects, if you will. So liberal arts, unbelievably important, huge proponent of it, and so grateful that we have this community that ascribes to that kind of educational pedagogy. So, yeah.
Thank you, Jason. I've got a nice host of questions here. If I get to the next question, we're not going to have any time for your questions. So can I just invite anybody who might have thoughts or questions for these three to jump in? And if nobody does, I'll come back to mine. Mine are hard, so you guys should ask them. Yeah, Patty.
Well, I'm thinking about,
Nice and loud, Patty.
all of you work with students to some extent, probably better than Jenny more than you, Jason. I wonder if you have examples in what you're seeing your students gain from their education here. And so, you know, if they were sitting in your seats, what would you know they could say right now about how their work with you shaped by their
I have a quick example. I mean, you know, this morning with the invasion of Ukraine, my MD this week, my student leader, music director, intern on the worship team, Grace Condello, is a political science major. And so she's someone I can talk to about planning liturgy with geopolitics and that kind of stuff in mind. And that's just a real, and it's happened before, like after the January 6th insurrection last year, having Matthew Metz, this political scientist, go up there and pray. Just having people who kind of have this skill in music, and they've done choir, and they've done a music minor or something, but they're also a political science major, just is such a gift for the worship life of the community and guiding people through those moments. That's just an example that popped to mind.
That's a great example. I'm a little bit more general. I think if anything, I see we meet individually and we meet with our groups. And I have seen critical thinkers. I have seen people who are minors or majors in biology doing a lot of critical thinking, a lot of individuals who are going deeper when it comes to either faith and ministry and intersection with learning. I have also seen students who enjoy having the freedom to be able to be doing research and at the same time being able to tap into those gifts of what it looks like to be in ministry and tapping into what it looks like to be connecting at an individual level and in humanity and whatnot. So constantly there are conversations happening whether things are ethical, whether things are not ethical, whether things are right or they're not just or anything like that. So these are conversations that are constantly happening with our students as we are looking at how we definitely navigate missions and ministry and outreach. And trust me, sometimes I'm like, wow, you're asking questions that I even haven't thought about. And that in itself, as a learner, I'm always going to be a learner, and I'm learning from my students as much as they're learning from me.
Yeah. And Patty, I've actually had the privilege of getting to meet a ton of our students for just testing purposes. So they're coming through my office all the time. I have never heard so many jobs I've never heard of being created by our students. Yeah. Literally, they're like, well, I love the Christian background that I'm learning. I love my faith. But I also really love the hard sciences and data science. So I'm going to go over to Africa and figure out how to make wells for people and also spread the word. Like all of these things. And that's just one really poorly worded example of all this melding of knowledge to things that I am not that creative and I'm not that clever. And it's so great to see our students exhibiting that sort of cleverness. They're not just looking for jobs, they're creating their own paths through the world to do good and to do good for others. So it's really incredible.
Thanks for that good question, Patty. Who else? Yeah, please, Russell. Russell, you got to be nice and loud for the sake of those in the back.
Besides your sedate, calm personalities, are there any experiences or mentors or books you read that kind of helped you with your public relations that you have to do when you are the reason that we have COVID at Westmont? Or you get accused of kind of being the propagator of all this problem. What influenced you to and helped you get to this point?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Black Swan was an incredible book, and Freakonomics were two incredible books that I can point to that had explicit connections to what I'm doing now. That again, in a really unique way, blend in all the things that you do with liberal arts. Namely, you can look at numbers and data and all these things, and look at historical context, and then figure out what do you do with these kinds of things. For those of you who don't know what a Black Swan event is, it's based on this story of folks talking about how they've never seen something or never experienced something. And it references literally a black swan. People had never thought that a swan could be black until you finally saw a black swan. And so in risk management, we talk about that kind of event. What's the next black swan event? A lot of people are calling the current COVID pandemic a black swan event. How could we have seen this coming? Well, had we read our history books, this isn't the first time this has happened. In fact, many of you have heard of this thing called the Black Death, the plague in Europe. That was a long time ago. And yet, every so often, we experience these big pandemics. So those are two things. Honestly, the mentor question, mentor part of that, you know him, you love him, Troy Harris. He's literally the reason that I am sitting here with a microphone in front of you today. He's been a huge part of that. And again, a product of this liberal arts education. He was, I believe, the class president, I won't out his age, but a while ago. And he was in all kinds of different industries. And, you know, he took a lot of that liberal arts background, but also had a true love for the hard sciences. So created a best-in-class risk and emergency program that everyone talks about. And that is, I have no doubt, a direct, a causal link, if you will, to his liberal arts education. So,
Evan, Jenny?
I'll speak into the mentorship. I think, if anything, Angela Diamore has been an asset to my career and to what I do. She is a fearless leader. On top of that, though, my number one strength is individualism. So you'll probably see me reaching out, and I have already reached out to several faculty to take them out for tea and coffee, because I'm a firm believer that the more minds we have and the more thoughts we have and the more we collaborate, the stronger a program can be. And I think that's important for what I do with my students. And so I'll invite faculty or staff for coffee, tea, and just discuss and just hear what they're going through, what they are doing. And it helps me to also navigate decisions on when I'm thinking and how I'm spearheading and leading the students. And so, yeah, some of you have already had coffee with me or tea with me, and it's what I like to do. I think that's one of the beautiful things about Westmont is that we're a community. And despite whether we agree or disagree, you know, we are brothers and sisters in Christ, and we can learn to see beyond our differences and learn to be able to still love each other and learn to be able to move forward. And yeah, so I think that's the beauty that Westmont has taught me, and I saw that even in when I was a student here.
You could probably, I don't think I had a great answer.
Okay. Yeah.
pass.
That's a no comment.
Just a heads up, that was our campus pastor. We're in some crisis here.
Lisa had one question.
Lisa, you have a real question, please.
Oh, okay. Well, I kind of passed, but because I think I've missed something in the question. But one thing I did have in my mind, you talked about communication and communicating, and I just remembered there used to be like the speech and debate tournament here, and I always did that because I did forensics, like speech and debate in high school. So I think that was one of those things that like helped me communicate ideas and learn how to do that effectively and get helpful critique when I didn't do that effectively. So that was just another little kind of communication place I learned some skills. Yeah, just doing the debate tournament. That was fun.
Others?
Thank you. Is this working? You know, Evan, I, like you, am a Westmont grad, and I think you were a senior when I was a freshman, and so I always looked up to you. Just sit down and... Well, this is a question for all three of you, though. Can you remember back, kind of pinpointing conversations you had with people about how to think more deeply, how to engage in writing and reading critically, and just how to appreciate the liberal arts during your time and since your time in college?
Ladies first.
I will say Chris, my philosophy professor, right next to me. If anything, he definitely challenged me to think deeper. I was like, why am I taking philosophy, and what's the point of philosophy? Now I find myself using a lot of the methods that I learned in my philosophy class when I am asking my students questions to think critically on what it is that they're making decisions and how they're leading several of their ministries. I think of Sherry Larson. Man, was it hard to get an A in her class when you were writing, but yeah, she really taught me how to be a lot more of an eloquent writer and be able to just see details that I was missing even in my writing, and how that has also helped when I am having conversations with individuals. I think of Greg Spencer's communication class, the rhetoric one, and just thinking about it and how he delved deeply into like these conversations and questions about identity and life, and just what does that look like, and how to even process those thoughts, and how to even dissect those thoughts to see how I can relate to individuals and also communicate effectively with other individuals who may not understand what I am saying or who may not see eye to eye. And so I think of everything that I've been through. And then I can't forget Dr. Martin, who's no longer here, also, and in my organic chemistry class, just constantly asking me, Jenny, you gotta look at the details and stuff like that. So, I've learned something, if anything, is paying attention to even the most, what we consider sometimes insignificant words, verbs, or adjectives, or anything like that. They are so important in how we communicate and what we say. Language is so important, and also the way that we receive it is so important, and the way that we, in a way, interact with it is also very important. So, yeah.
I was just sort of thinking, just all of it, I see lots of faces here who taught me, and constructive feedback and things I got wrong. I think so much of what I learned to think deeper was those red letters, or those red ink, like, but have you considered this perchance? And like, never thought of that. But yeah, and even, I go to music because I was a music major, and so thinking deeply, like, poor Lisa DeBoer had me at not my highest academic point, I think, in art theory and criticism. I was going through things, but it was like having to evaluate. I just remember her question: "What is art?" Oh, like, I think I like said some snarky answer like art is cool, and I'm like, but just that question is still with me, and it actually like I went on to study like theology and the arts later, and looking back, I was like, oh yeah, I was kind of primed for this, even when I didn't even realize how important it was going to be to think about Tolstoy's ideas about art or whatever. So. Yeah, that kind of stuff where you have to think and you have to come up with, and sometimes it's not like, 3 + 3 = 6. That's like a very definitive thing. But you have to kind of like do cultural analysis, or you have to kind of think through evaluating art. That's a big question that really makes you think. And then like music teachers helping you like evaluate quality of art, and going through history of Western music and all that stuff, and having piano lessons was good for that.
Yeah, there's a few classes I think that really stick with me. One of my favorite classes that I took at Texas was evolutionary ecology, which was just such a weird combination of words. And I was like, well, I like evolution science. I don't know, it looks cool. I don't know what this is. And I mistakenly took like a hybrid grad class, so I felt really behind. But my professor was so engaging. Dr. Pianka. He was a lizard expert. He went to Australia, went to the outback, and would go and burn swaths of the outback and count the things that he found in the burn areas. And it was fascinating, and he incorporated these things called Lotka-Volterra equations about predator-prey interactions, which I could not tell you very much about, but those words still stick with me today. That was such a good critical thinking, deep thinking kind of class. My senior seminar was on Roman history with this very surly British gentleman who smoked way too much and was missing his teeth because of that, but was one of the smartest, most engaging professors of all time. And I still remember I wrote my thesis on the Battle of Teutoburg Forest. I don't remember much of what I said, and I don't think I did very well on it, but I did pass, so that's good enough for me. But he taught me how to think about things differently. I remember going into that thesis with a certain idea of what this was going to be like, and him saying, you're wrong, read this book and tell me why you're wrong. And having that conversation and engaging with him and realizing, oh, I was misthinking of this. I was misthinking of my prompt. I was misinterpreting what I thought had gone on, and being able to reevaluate and get to the point that I thought made better sense. And of course, philosophy. Who doesn't like philosophy? I liked philosophy, Jenny. I wasn't very good at it, but I liked it. But really getting to ask those questions of why, and not just from a Christian biblical perspective, but like all of Western philosophy, because I think that was so important to help better influence my own faith and understanding of why we're here and why I felt this need to do X, Y, or Z. And that professor, who I believe actually was a grad student, that was one of the curses of going to a large research institution, was you were often taught by grad students. But he was not that much older than we were, or had a very youthful face, and was so engaged and so engaging, and was so good at eliciting these great conversations. And those were some of the best class conversations that I ever had. And again, so that wide array of classes, I think, really speaks to lots of different things that I really loved about my education.
There's deep wisdom hidden behind youthful faces.
Truth.
Witness these three.
Westmont did not teach me to grow facial hair.
You and me both. My wife makes me shave my beard constantly, so, or lack thereof.
Well, thank you all for your good questions and comments, and let's thank our panels. Yeah. Thanks very much for being with us today. Just a quick reminder that at 3:30 we're back here with Molly Worthen for talk and discussion. You are very welcome to that. And before I let you go, this is a good opportunity for me to just express my debt of gratitude to a number of people who have made these events possible. That's the Getty Institute staff, Kristen Full, Associate Director, Aaron Sizer, Associate Director. I think I saw Phoebe Wicks, our assistant, come in. Phoebe's done amazing work. We've also had great support from Rick Ostrander on the book group project. That's been fantastic. Thank you, Rick, if you're here. And then many other faculty have had good insights and guidance for us over a couple of difficult years of planning. So thanks, everyone. And thanks again for y'all being here today. I hope you enjoyed your lunch, and blessings on your afternoon.